All right, so this process is going to be converting a rasterized bitmap or JPEG image into a vector graphic. And in this case study, I'll be using Adobe Fireworks, and I'll be exporting a Fireworks transparent PNG, an Adobe Illustrator, AI, EPS, and SVG document, Adobe Photoshop PSD, and an Adobe PDF from Photoshop. I'm going to export a Photoshop PNG that is in RGB, red, green, blue, and a CMYK version of the logo. We'll also do a JPEG, which obviously, which is what we're trying to convert from, but we'll have a higher quality version of the JPEG exported from our vector graphic. This is a service that you can charge $250 for, and at the minimum $125. So depending on the complexity of the graphic itself, if it's more complex, I'll do $250. If it's not very complex and it's simple, kind of like the one I'm about to do, I'll do $125. But I'm just going to show you guys a couple of ways that the conversion can be done if the logo is very small. This is the logo that we have. The original size is probably a third of this. I found a couple of versions of their logos here in Google. This is very small, 200 by 100 pixels, but it's transparent. We've got a 260 by 260 pixel version where most of the content in this is not even a part of the logo. An older version of the logo here, and another older version of the logo here. So I'll copy this one as well. And I'll paste all of those here so that I can have each version inside of my document. We're going to start with the bigger one. All right, so the first thing I do is download the images, obviously. I try to find the largest size that I can find. And one of the main things that I want to focus on at first is the easy part, the text. So I have a lot of different fonts on my computer. I have a general idea of what this font is. It's Arial Rounded MT Bold, which is this ORDOVA OWLINGENTER text. So I'll go ahead and replace that. And it's very similar. It's not exact, but it's close enough for what we need to do today. And I'll try to get the spacing of the text to be exactly like the spacing of what's in our logo. All right, so the only thing that's off about this font is our A. See, we have a totally different A here. All right, but that's not a problem right now. I know we're going to have to find something to replace these 3 bowling pins and this bowling ball. And that's going to be fairly easy to create. So I'm going to go to Google and search bowling pin. I'm going to search for transparent image. I'm going to click on images, search tools, size, large, color, transparent. And we'll see if we can find an image that is pretty well designed. I really like these images here, but this is something that might even work as well. But it looks like the quality is not that great. It's a clip art. But I want to find something that is more of a flat color, like a solid black. Sometimes I'll have to change the size though from large to medium. And we'll have other options. And if I don't see something I like, because I'm picky and I want it to be the best version of this bowling pin that we can find, I'll just go and draw it myself. So I'll grab the closest thing. Since this image has no transparency, you can copy this straight out of the browser. Otherwise, you'd have to save the image. If it did have transparency, you'd have to save it before editing. I'm just going to copy this and paste it into Fireworks. Create a new document. Paste. I'm going to transform it. Control T. Control Alt F if you're on a Mac. Replace Control with Command, so it'd be Command Alt F, I believe. And I'm really just going to trace over half of this image. So first thing that I'm going to do, since this image is centered, is I'm going to grab a rectangle, draw it over the entire image. I'm going to type Control T and trim this rectangle in half. Right, and then I'm going to copy my bowling pin image, Control C. I'm going to grab my rectangle. I'm going to type on my keyboard Control Shift V as in Victor. All right, and then I'll hide my original image, which is in the background. All right, so now I have half of a bowling pin. Now I'll type on my keyboard to flatten this. Basically what I just did was I pasted. I'll go back and show you exactly what I did. If I Control X to cut my original image out, I'm going to change my canvas to transparent. All right, and I'll grab my rectangle. When I click on my rectangle or have that rectangle selected, if I type Control Shift V as in Victor, this is going to paste our image inside of that rectangle. All right, so now I hit Control Shift Alt Z to flatten or rasterize that rectangle and basically merge half of that image into that rectangle. So now there's only half of an image. I'm going to grab the vector pen tool in my toolbar and I'll start to trace around the bowling pin. So what I'm going to try to do is make sure that my first pin point is right in the middle of my screen. All right, so when I click on that on my canvas to create the first pin point, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move that pin exactly where you want it. Now, using the second point, you can determine where the end or the next curve is going to end or start. And when you click on the canvas, before you let go of the mouse button, you want to drag to create a curve. So if I were to click down here and to create too big of a curve, I would let this go and just hit Control Z to undo. If you create too small of a curve, the whole bowling pin won't look smooth and rounded. So you want to try to create bigger curves. And you can always adjust your curve. Once you create a second point, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move that point where it needs to be. So I'll scroll out a bit and I'll create a few more curves. All right, so as I draw this line, you got to keep in mind, wherever you draw or wherever you stretch your curve, wherever your mouse cursor is in the direction of the line is where the curve is going to start to form itself, right? So we want the direction of our line to go with the direction of the edge of the pen, right? So if I draw my curve straight down, the rest of the curve will start to adjust based on where the last point ended and which direction that last point was facing. So I want my point to kind of face in the direction of the pen, the shape of the pen. So I'll go down more, create another curve in the direction of the shape of the pen. All right, so now I'll draw another line beyond our the edge or the foot of our pen, but I'll make sure that my curve is aligned to that outer edge of the pen. All right, so now I can go and grab my knife tool with this path, this curve we just created selected. I'm going to cut the bottom of this pen, or the bottom of our curve. So now I have two individual lines. Let me give those lines a border or an edge. All right, so the red part is the part that we just cut off. The green part is actually going to be part of our pen. Now I'll get my pen tool again, and we're going to attach this next curve to the end of our last curve we created by just clicking on the edge. So now we have that curve again, but we want to click on that point one more time to break that curve into a hard edge or hard corner. So now I know the bottom of our pen has a little bit of a shadow. I'm just going to keep this pen, the bottom of the pen, I'm going to round it a little bit. And I'm going to hold the shift key on my keyboard so that I can make sure as I'm drawing this line out to round our edge, that we have some symmetry when we go to mirror this pen and to create a full pen on both sides. All right, so now I'm going to click my point again to break this curve. And now we have half of our pen. All right, so before we mirror this pen to create a full pen, I want to now draw our pen stripes, and we can use, well, actually, since these pen stripes kind of have a rounded design, we can go ahead and mirror our pen and use an ellipse to create this rounded pinstripe. So what I'll do is take my path and duplicate it. I can type on my keyboard Control-Shift-D. Now I have two individual paths. With that path duplicated, I want to go up to Modify, Transform, Flip Horizontal. And I'm going to hold down Shift on my keyboard and the right arrow to move this over to the right of my pen. Now I'll grab both of my paths, and I'm going to change the relative alignment tool from canvas to object. You can find this alignment tab in Window and Align. Once you find that Align tab, it might be on the right hand side. I like to move that entire window over to my left hand tab. All right, so you've got this entire Align window. All right, so now we're going to align relative to object. We're going to have those two paths selected, and I'm going to set this to 0 pixels, and then we're going to space evenly horizontally based on that 0 pixel alignment. All right, so now what I'll do is grab my right path. I'm going to click on my vector pen tool. Actually, no, I want to click on the sub selection tool, which is the white arrow. And then I'll grab the first point here at the top of this path. I'm going to move it, let it go, and then I'm going to grab it again and move it back. And it should snap to our first path that we created. Now I've got to do the same thing for the bottom. We'll grab that last point, move it, and then move it back. And now we have one single path that should be connected. So now I can grab my bitmap, or we can go back and grab this image. I'll paste it here in the background of my canvas, move it down one, and then I'll make sure that's centered relative to canvas, vertically and horizontally. We'll hit Control T to transform this, and then using the Alt button on the keyboard, hold that button down while we make the transformation, and it should transform from the center. Now I can align this to my canvas and transform this original image back to the large size that we had. All right, so this path I see is a little bit shorter in width than I want it to be compared to where our pin is. All right, so what I'm gonna do is hit Control T when I have this path selected to transform it, and I'll make it just a little bit wider so that it fits our pin. Now, since I've made that wider, I wanna align our path to the center of our canvas. We're gonna relative to canvas alignment, and we'll align that horizontally. And then I'll move my background image to fit inside of, let me delete this half background. I'll move my background image to fit inside of my path. Now I want to grab an ellipse, and I want to create an ellipse that fits inside of our top curve. I'm going to center this horizontally to my canvas, and I'm going to use the cut tool, the knife tool, which is the letter Y on the keyboard, to cut this ellipse in half. I'm going to hold down Shift as I make this cut, and I'll delete the bottom half, or I'll hit Control T with the bottom half selected, hold down the Shift key, and I'll rotate this 180 degrees. Now I can hold down Shift and the down arrow to move this up and down 10 pixels. And then I'll align this exactly where I need it to be for the bottom of our pin, the bottom of the stripe, I mean. All right, so technically this is one stripe. Now I can grab both of these paths, duplicate them, Control Shift D. I'm going to hold down the Shift arrow or the Shift button and the down arrow to move these down so that we can create one more new stripe. And then I'm going to let go of Shift and hold the up or down arrow to move this in position where I want it to be. All right, so I know I need to adjust the bottom of this second stripe. We need to move that up. I'm going to stretch this one. I'm going to hit Control T to stretch it, make it wider, and I'll hold the Alt arrow so that, or I'm sorry, the Alt key so that it stretches from the center. And I'll move it into place. I'll do the same with this top of this second stripe. Control T, hold down Alt, stretch it from the sides. Until I feel like it's aligned to my stripe exactly how I want it to be. That works. So now I'll connect these two lines together. I'll click on the pen tool. I'll select the edge of one of the lines, and I'll just draw anywhere out inside of my canvas and then connect those lines to each other. All right, so this is one stripe. We'll go and click on the edge of our next line for our next stripe and do the same thing. Connect those together. I'm going to grab these two stripes. I'm going to go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Union. Now they are acting as one object. I'll grab my pen. I'm going to go and duplicate, Control-Shift-D to duplicate. Holding down the Shift key now, I want to select my stripes also. So we have one of our pens selected, a duplicate, and then I want to hold Shift to select my stripes. Alternatively, you can select your pen, the one that's duplicated, hold down Control and select your stripes in the layer section. All right, so when you're selecting multiple items in your layers panel, you want to hold down Control. If you hold down Shift, you'll select multiple items in a group that are connected to each other in the layers panel. All right, so from composite path down to bitmap, if I hold down the Shift key, this will select everything in between those layers. If I hold down the Alt key instead, this will select each individual layer. Holding down Shift when selecting items in the canvas is how you select individual items. All right, so with these two items selected, I'll go to Modify, Combine Paths, Intersect. All right, so basically what I've done is created an intersection from my duplicate pen and my stripes. Now I'm going to duplicate those stripes, Control-Shift-D. I'm going to hold down Command or Control. We're going to select our pen, or I'm sorry, actually Shift since I'm selecting in the canvas. So we should have our duplicated stripes and our pen selected. Go to Modify, Combine Paths, Punch. All right, so just to give you some perspective of what I just did, I'll change the color of my pen to blue. I'll change the color of my stripes to orange. All right, so we created our stripes and then we duplicated the stripes so that we can have multiple stripes, and the duplicate of the stripe we punched out of our pen design. All right, which is why we needed to duplicate the stripes. All right, so if you don't duplicate the stripes and you punch those stripes out of the pen design, you'll delete the stripes in the process, which is why we have to make a duplicate. The same reason we made a duplicate of the pen to create the intersection for the stripes. All right, so there's our bowling pin. We don't really need to make a shadow underneath it. I'm going to go in here and delete the background. I delete the edges. I'll remove the edges off of those vectors. And I want to make a little change to the top of my pen. I don't like how it's pointed. So I'll grab an ellipse tool. We'll create something like a little circle here. Change the color of that. Then I'll move it down exactly where I want it to be. I'll make sure it's centered in my canvas. And then I'm going to cut this right around the edge of where the circle meets the top of the bowling pin. I'm going to delete the bottom of that cut circle, and now I have the top of the bowling pin that I actually want. So what I'm going to do is grab my pen tool. Again, this, even though this is green, it's really just a line, so I'll turn that line to like a purple, and I'll delete the filling. So this is really what we have because we cut this line or this circle into two pieces. So now we can grab the point of one of the points of this line, and I'm just going to draw a random shape going around the outside of my bowling pin. So now we'll take this shape, which I'll give it now a color fill of green, and I'll remove the edge, and we're gonna cut out the point of our bowling pin. So I'll grab the shape and I'll hold shift and grab the bowling pin. Since the shape is on top of the bowling pin, we can go to modify, combine paths, and punch that shape out of the bowling pin. All right, so I'll turn my bowling pin black and the stripe red. I'm gonna group those together, Control G. I'm gonna Control C to copy. And I'll go back over to my logo, Control V to paste. Then I'll transform the size to make it smaller. And we'll just keep that right there for now. I'm gonna go ahead and draw a circle. So I'll grab my ellipse tool. And then I'm gonna hold down shift when I draw this circle. All right, so when you hold down shift to draw the circle, it's not going to be an ellipse like this. Holding down shift makes sure that the circle actually maintains its symmetry. Basically, we're gonna recreate the bowling ball. All right, so I'm gonna hide that ball and create 3 more smaller circles. I'm gonna turn this green for now, in place of the little circles that are where you put your fingers into the bowling ball. So I'm just gonna duplicate, Control Shift D and move that, Control Shift D and move that. All right, so now I can turn these white and then unhide my ellipse, the circle that we created for our bowling ball. What I'm going to do now is grab these 3 individual circles. I'll go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Union. Now those are one big shape. And I'll duplicate those, Control Shift D. Now we have 2. But we're going to use one of the duplicates and cut that out of our circle, out of our bowling ball. So holding down shift, I'm going to select the bowling ball and one set of the holes. I'll go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Punch. All right, so now we have this shape and this shape. All right, so now I'll take my bowling pin, I'll adjust it, kind of move it into place exactly where I want it, maybe even smush it a bit so that it fits the size. I'll Control Shift D to duplicate, and I'll transform the duplicate. Do it a 3rd time. I'll duplicate our original bowling pin, Control T to transform, and transform it in the opposite direction. The last thing that I want to do is Control Shift G. I'm going to select all of these bowling pins and hit Control Shift G to ungroup them. And then I'm going to only select the black portion of the bowling pins, and then I'll go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Union. Now we have one big shape. I'll grab my bowling pin stripes, Modify, Combine Paths, Union. And then I'm going to draw a circle again. And I'm going to fit this circle to the edge of my bowling ball. Control T to transform that circle. I'm going to make it this exact same size of my bowling ball. All I can really do is go and grab that bowling ball and look at the width and the height, which is 86 by 86. So I'll make sure that my new circle is also 86 by 86 and place right over the top of that bowling ball. Actually, I'm going to move it behind the bowling ball. I'm going to hit Control T to transform that, and holding down Alt on the keyboard, I'm going to transform it from the center to make it just slightly bigger. And I'm going to keep this. I might want to save this in the background, this layer. So I'm going to hit Control Shift D to duplicate, and then I'll hide one of those layers and lock it. So now what I'm going to do with this red circle, since it's now on top of my bowling pins and under my bowling ball, is I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to select my bowling pins. So we should now have the bowling pins and the circle selected. And I'll go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Punch. All right, so now we've just punched this red circle that we created, which is a little bigger than our bowling pin, out of our, a little bigger than our bowling ball, out of the bowling pins. All right, so now I can take my bowling ball and my bowling pins, if I wanted to keep the bowling pins black, and go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Union. All right, but I don't know if I want to keep them both black. So right now, I'll just hide the red stripes, and we'll keep those white for now because we're going to create a more minimalist version of this logo. I'm also going to hide the white circles or the holes inside of our ball. All right, so if I hide the entire logo, we have our bowling pins and our bowling ball. Now for the C in Cordova, or the CBC, I'm going to use a few shapes to kind of manipulate this curve so that we can get an exact replica of this curve. But I'm going to use some circles and ellipses, maybe even some rectangles. I'm going to draw out a circle that is about the size of our C. And I'm going to hold down Shift when I do that. I'm going to move that into place. I'm going to draw out another circle. Maybe turn this one green. And this circle is going to act as the curve of the C. It looks like it's actually like an ellipse. All right, so this is more of an ellipse. So we're going to just kind of adjust this ellipse a bit to where it fits right on the edge of our circle that we created. And I'm going to duplicate this ellipse, Control Shift D. I'm going to set that one to a transparency of 50. And I'm going to change the color to blue. Now hit Control T to transform this. All right, so now we're going to try to get the outer shape of the C. So I'm going to move this one down to the bottom layer, this blue. Grab our white circle, and we're going to transform it just a little bit so that it fits up to the edge of our outer circle or ellipse. All right, so now basically we have the shape of our C. With the green layer being on the very top, we can punch that out of our blue layer, which is underneath all the other circles. So I'll select the green layer and hold Shift to select our blue layer. We'll go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Punch. All right, so the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to use maybe a square or a rectangle, and from the bottom right hand corner, I'm going to draw out a rectangle so that I can cut out a portion of my letter C. This rectangle is a rectangle shape, so you have to hold Control-Shift-G to ungroup this rectangle shape so that it can become a path. And you'll notice when you have a shape, you'll see the blue points on the corners of the shape. When you have a path, you'll see the lines on the edge of the path of the shape. All right, so I want this path, this rectangle, to sit right at the center of our C, or our ellipse, our circle that we've made. All right, and it might snap into place. And holding Shift, I'm going to select both the rectangle and our C. I'll go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Punch. All right, so the next thing that I want to do is duplicate my circle here. That is going to be the outer edge of our C. Okay, and I want to cut that out of the C itself. So we're going to grab our duplicate and the C. We'll go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Punch. And if the circle was not big enough, you'll see when you zoom into the C that there's still a little space between the edge of the C and the circle. So I'm going to hit Control-Z to undo that punch. And then I'm going to grab those two circles that we have and just adjust them to make them a little bit bigger. Control-T, adjust it to the bottom, and that should fit perfectly. So now I'll grab one of those circles and our C. I'll go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Punch. All right, so it looks like I need to go back and adjust it one more time. So I'm going to hit Undo. I'm going to grab our circles, Control-T to transform it up 1 pixel. Then I'll grab one circle in the C, Modify, Combine Paths, Punch. All right, so now I basically have two sections of my C. I'll go now to Modify, Combine Paths, Split, so that I can break those two sections apart. All right, I'm going to delete the section I don't need. I'll grab my circle and the remaining section of my C, and I'll go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Union. All right, so now this is going to be, we'll change the color of this to green. All right, so this is half of our logo. Now we have to do the same thing with the bottom half of the logo. So the first thing I want to do is grab a rectangle. I'm going to draw this rectangle out to fit the back of our B. That rectangle is going to have kind of a rounded edge. If you turn the rounding up, you'll see that it gets really round, but we want to round that up a little bit. We're going to grab another ellipse tool, and we're going to draw a circle. And we're going to snap that circle to the top of our rectangle. I'll hold Control-T to transform this circle, and then we'll transform that to the bottom of our C that we created. All right, and I'll just hold Shift or the right arrow to move that into place. Now I'm going to grab another rectangle tool, draw at the bottom of our C that we created, and snapping to the edge of that C, I'm going to make this the same height as the C itself. I'm going to ungroup that rectangle. So now we have this piece, this rectangle, this circle, and this rectangle with the rounded edge, which I'm going to ungroup the rectangle with the rounded edge, and now it should be a shape. All right, so I'm going to duplicate my circle. I'll turn that one blue. give it maybe 50% transparency. And now I'm going to transform this, but first I want to move it down to maybe the center of our rectangle. And it should snap in the center. And I'll transform it, Control T, and make it the same height as, or snap it to the top of the rectangle we drew here. Now, using my right arrow, I'm going to move this over into place. And it looks like it's a little more of an ellipse, so I'm going to hit Control T to transform this and stretch the width of it just a bit. I'll move that to the very bottom layer. And now I want to grab a rectangle. We're going to throw this at the bottom of the rectangle that's connecting our C and snap it to the bottom of that. And then snap it to the top of the rectangle that's the back of our B, and also snap it to the center of our circle. All right, so now I'll ungroup that, Control Shift G. I'll hold down Shift to grab my circle. I'll go up to Modify Combine Paths Union. So now we have one big shape. I can cut this one big shape out of, I'll change the color of the shape, out of our the rounded edge of our B. So I'll grab that B, I'll grab that shape, we'll go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Punch. And the last thing that we need to do now is make another rectangle just so that we can fill this gap here. All right, so if I change the color of this B to the same green and change the transparency back to 100, you'll see there's a little bit of an inconsistency. Here. So I'm gonna just grab a rectangle and we're gonna cover that inconsistency up, ungroup that rectangle, and I'll select my C, both rectangles, the top of my B, and I'll go up to Modify Combine Paths Union. All right, so now what I can do is grab this C, we're going to duplicate it, Control Shift D. I'll go up to Modify, Transform, Flip Vertical, hold down Shift and the down arrow, and I'll lock this into the place at the bottom of my rectangle that's connecting the back of my B. If I zoom all the way in, you'll be able to see by pixel exactly where that needs to go. And then I can make a slight adjustment to the height of this B, the top of this B, using the sub-selection tool, clicking on one of the points that has maybe the front of our B, and the bottom needs to be a little bit bigger. So using the sub-selection tool, we can make an adjustment to the bottom version of the B. Clicking on individual points, we can make changes to the curves of the B. And you can even press the up and down arrow when you select an individual point to move that point exactly where you want it. So I'll lock my background so we don't move it. And I'll grab all the points in the bottom of this B and hold the down arrow to make the bottom of this be a little bit thicker. All right, so now I'll grab the bottom of my B and the C. I'll grab my rectangle tool or my rectangle, and I'll grab the top section. We're gonna go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Union. Now we have our logo. Hold down Shift and the left arrow, and we'll click the left, type the left arrow 3 times to move that over. I'll change the color of this CBC to the same color of our logo. I'll hold down Shift again and move it back to the right 3 times, which is 30 pixels, and then we'll hide our background. Now I'll grab my text, holding down the Shift key, I'll select all of my text. I'm gonna hold Control G to group those together, Control Shift D to duplicate that group. I'll hide my original group because we want to keep our text in case we need to go back and use that text for other documents later. I'll lock that default section of or set of text that we just hid. And now I'll ungroup my duplicate, Control Shift G. I'm going to right click each text line, and we're going to choose Convert to Paths, or you can type Control Shift P or Command Shift P. So I'll hit Command or Control Shift P, and I'll do that for all of my text. Now I'll grab all of my text, holding down the Shift key, and I'll hit Control Shift G to ungroup that. Now we can go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Union, and we have one big group of text. And this is a shape, right, which is a composite path. It's no longer text. So when you send this to a printing company, they won't have any issues opening this document because we've converted this now to a vector image and not just type text. All right, so unhiding my background image, I'll move this over a bit. I prefer to keep our bowling pins and bowling ball black. Maybe we can go and unhide the stripes to keep those red. And I'll take all of my logo, select everything in my logo, and I'm going to Control G to group this. I'm going to Control Shift duplicate, and then we'll take the original that we duplicated, lock it and hide it so we can always have a backup. I'm going to ungroup, Control Shift G, my duplicate, and I'll connect my black layers. So the bowling ball, the bowling pins, the black text. I'm going to go up to Modify, Combine Paths, Union. Since all of this is black, it should just be one layer. Now I'll grab my CBC text and my stripes. I'll hold Command or Control and select the individual layer that I know is those stripes. I'll go to Modify, Combine Paths, Union. All right, so now we have just 2 layers, and they are vectorized. So if I change my canvas color to transparent, I'll grab the Cordova Bowling Center logo, I'll group this together, and we're going to center this on our canvas relative to canvas vertically and horizontally. And there's our logo. So what I'll do is Control Shift G to ungroup this now. We've got our logo, and I've got this on a canvas size of 1280 by 1280. So I'll copy everything, go over to a new canvas at 1280 by 1280. Change the background canvas to transparent. Control V as in Victor to paste. And I'm going to hit Control Shift S to save this as. I'm going to open up a new document, where we're going to browse for our project folder. In my case, I'm doing this for a client who needs multiple logos, and I'll throw this inside of a folder where all of the logos that I've vectorized are saved. In your case, if you're doing this for a particular client, you'll have a folder for that client. I'm going to save this as Cordova Bowling Center. Now I'll hit Control-Shift-S to save this, and then we're going to change the type from Fireworks PNG to Adobe Illustrator AI, and I'll save it. I'll hit Control-Shift-S again and change the file type to Photoshop PSD and click Save. And now I'll go back to my original. All right, we're gonna grab this, and with all these layers hidden, this is gonna be our original document. So I'll unhide my background and move that into, we'll center that on our canvas. And I'll hit Control-Shift-S, and we're gonna save this as CBC backup in case we need to access any of these layers that we created previously along with the text. So your client might ask, what was the font that you used to create this logo? Well, you go and grab that layer that has the text. We can hide everything else. And you say, let's see what this text was. You find the text and you let them know what the font name was based on this text, which you can't do when you save a logo that is vectorized. You can no longer edit or see what that text is because this is a shape now and it's not text. So I'm going to go and save my bowling pin, Control-Shift-S, as CBC pin. We might need this bowling pin later in the future, so we have a vector version of our bowling pin. All right, this is an example of a JPEG that we converted into a vector, or multiple JPEGs that we've converted into vectors. And I simply created or drew out and trimmed each individual layer that we had a gradient, right? So as you can see here, I noticed that there was a gradient coming from this. So it's hard to recreate the gradient if this was all one shape. So I knew that the bottom of these skating wheels had to be one shape and the top had to be one shape. But the gradient of this blue section goes into the purple, which is the solid color purple for the bottom. So we created two individual sections. I set the bottom section to be solid purple, the top to be a gradient, which is a radial gradient. And in the gradient settings, of course, let me change the color to like red and green, and then yellow. All right, so all I had to do was go back and set the colors of that gradient. We don't even have to have it on the screen to know what it needs to be, but we wanted this bluish color. In the middle, we wanted this middle kind of fade between that blue and purple, and then on the edge, we needed that dark purple. All right, so I set the gradient to where the end of the gradient will bring that dark purple to merge with the bottom of our wheel. All right, so if I move that gradient, all right, same thing with this one. All right, so the next thing that we need to do is open up our folder where we saved these. And I'm going to open the Photoshop version and the Illustrator version. And by default, Photoshop will create a empty background layer. I'm going to delete that layer. I'm going to select it and hit the trash can icon to delete it. We're going to say yes. And I'll hit File, Save, so that we can save this without that background. I'll go up to File, Save As. First, I'm going to save this as a Photoshop PDF. I'm going to hit Save. I'm going to choose OK. And I'll just click Save PDF and yes. Then I'll go up to Layer, actually Image Mode, change the mode from RGB to CMYK. I'll choose Don't Merge because we don't want to merge the layers. We'll just hit OK. And then I'll go up to File, Save As. And we'll change this from PDF to a Photoshop document, PSD. And then we'll save this as CMYK. And we'll hit OK. Inside of Illustrator, we need to change our canvas size. So in Fireworks, the canvas was 1280 by 1280. So in Illustrator, we have to click on our artboard. So over in the artboards or in the right hand column, you should see a tab or an icon that says Artboards. We click on that. It gives us an Artboard 2 title. We only have one artboard here, and we see that it's kind of shrunk a little bit. We'll go up and click on the artboard paper icon, and now you can change the artboard size. So we'll do 1280 by 1280. And then you'll hit enter or OK. Now we'll hit File, Save. We'll just select our existing Adobe Illustrator file and override it. Hit yes, and then OK. Go to File, Save As. I'm going to change this from Adobe Illustrator to Illustrator APS. Save. OK. We'll go to File, Save As. And we'll change it from Illustrator to SVG. Save. OK. Now we can close Illustrator. We can close Photoshop. I'll create an individual folder. We'll title this CBC. And I'll grab all of my CBC projects and move them into that folder, but I'll make sure they're all closed first. So we have Adobe Illustrator, Fireworks PNG, we have the CBC backup, we have Photoshop PSD, Photoshop CMYK PSD, Photoshop or Adobe PDF, we have EPS and SVG. Move all of those into one folder. We're going to open up that folder and we're going to open up the Fireworks PNG. And I'll go File, Save As. I'm going to save this as a JPEG. And then we'll close it. We don't need to save it. So now we should have 8 files for one client. And then a backup that has all of their font, their text, and other layers. So sometimes, depending on what font I use, I might even go into my fonts library and paste that font in here for the client to be able to have access to it.